for June 24th, 2009. First item on the agenda is the consideration of minutes for the regular meeting on May 27, 2009. Those minutes have been included with our agenda materials. Are there any revisions to those minutes? All right, hearing none, the minutes will then stand approved as presented. We'll move on now to new business. First and only item under new business is consideration of a preliminary special use permit request. It's application Z09044 by Ms. Sarah Jan Malaikum for Lao Christian Fellowship, requesting a preliminary special use permit in order to construct an institutional group assembly use, a church in a residential single-family RS-15 zone for property located at 2409 Sulphur Springs Road. And Mr. Blomley, if you'd review that application for us, please.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers. Good afternoon, Chairman Rogers, members of the board. Our one and only item on the agenda today is for a preliminary special use permit for an institutional group assembly use, i.e. a church, in a residential single-family 15 zoning district. As you all know, churches are permitted by a special use permit only in single-family residential zoning districts. The property is 1.58 acres, located on the west side of Sulphur Springs Road, just south of Haynes Drive. And I'll show you the overhead right now, the zoning map. This is the subject property here. This is the intersection of Sulphur Springs and Haynes. To the north of the subject property is the Jamison Place subdivision, and to the south of the subject property is the Victoria Park subdivision. And there are some larger lot single-family residential homes to the north and west of the subject property, and there are also developed single-family homes along the east side of Sulphur Springs Road, too. As you can see, the entire area is zoned RS-15. And as I mentioned, and as Chairman Rogers alluded to, the applicants have made a request for a preliminary special use permit. And I know that a preliminary special use permit is not something that the board sees requests for on a regular basis. So what I'm going to do is read the subsection from Section 8 of our zoning ordinance dealing with preliminary special use permits. It says, additionally, an owner or other person having a contractual interest in a property which is the site of a proposed special use may, with the approval of the planning staff, submit an application requesting a preliminary special use permit if some of the information required under subsection 1 will not be available at the time the application is heard by the BZA. It is the purpose of this provision to enable an applicant for a special use permit to learn if there appear to be fundamental difficulties with the proposed special use at the proposed site before the applicant expends the time and funds necessary to develop all the information required by subsection 1. The BZA may grant a preliminary conditional special use permit if the application contains sufficient information for the BZA to reasonably conclude that the property has the capacity to meet the general and specific standards for the proposed special use set forth in Section 9. The granting of a preliminary conditional special use permit does not grant the applicant any vested rights or the privileges set forth in subsection E, nor does it entitle the applicant to a special use permit. A special use permit may be issued to an applicant who has received a preliminary special use permit only after the procedures described in subsections 1 and 2 have been fully complied with and the BZA has approved the special use application. The time limitation on reapplication in Section H does not apply to applications for a preliminary conditional special use permit. So what they have done is they have submitted some basic conceptual information as a part of this preliminary special use permit request. And if they are approved, they would have to come back before the board for a full special use permit request. But the preliminary special use permit process allows them to make a request to the board without having to expend the time and funds that would be required, such as hiring an engineer or an architect when they apply for their full special use permit. To get you a little further oriented with the property, this is a little bit more zoomed in. Here's the subject property. As you can see, it's bordered by 3 single-family lots to the north. The majority of the houses in the immediate vicinity have been damaged or destroyed by the April 10th tornado. The house that's on the subject property right now does also have some tornado damage and is not being inhabited at this time. As I mentioned, the Victoria Park subdivision is directly to the south. There is a strip of common area maintained by the Victoria Park Homeowners Association that lies in between the subject property and the Victoria Park, the actual single-family lots in Victoria Park. As you know, we went to the site on the ride around today, but I've got some photographs to orient you even further. This is looking across the street on Sulphur Springs. Directly across the street on Sulphur Springs. This is looking south across the street on Sulphur Springs. This is looking at the subject property along its southern property line. This is the common area that I mentioned of the Victoria Park subdivision. This is looking directly into the subject property. As you can see, this is behind the foliage is the existing house that is on the subject property and was damaged by the tornado. The northern half of the lot is not developed. As you can see, it's pretty open. And then some of the damaged structures to the north along Haynes Drive. And they're looking to the north at the corner of Haynes and Sulphur Springs. It's a close-up of the house that's on the subject property. This is a shot of what's behind the house. So there's a existing tree line. Once again, behind the house. This is the existing foliage along the southern property line. Once again, that existing foliage, you can see there's the existing house. The applicants have submitted a conceptual site plan. I'll go over the layout of that with you right now. Here's the front of the site along Sulphur Springs Road. They're proposing the access to be located along the northern property line. In addition to the existing structure, which they would utilize for uses that would be accessory to the main church building, such as church administrative offices, etc. The main church building, which would include the sanctuary and classrooms, would be located just to the north of the existing house and would be a minimum of 3,500 square feet. They have not decided the exact size of the building. They have not enlisted the help of an architect as of yet, and would be looking for a minimum of 3,500 square feet. Because this is a preliminary special use permit, we have not analyzed the connection to Sulphur Springs Road, and at the time that if they were to submit for their full special use permit, we would look at the location of the driveway to determine if it's the appropriate location on site. It may be that they would have to move the building further to the north and have the driveway in between the main building and the house, but that is yet to be determined at this time. As you can see on the overhead, on the site plan, the driveway would lead to the back of the site where there would be parking spaces at the rear of the site. The applicant is proposing although we do not have a conceptual landscape plan, she is committed in her paperwork to installing a Type C buffer along the southern, northern, and western property lines. Type C buffer is kind of our what we would customarily see on an institutional group assembly use when it abuts single-family uses, which this is abutted by single-family uses on all three sides, and that would be a 12-foot wide landscape buffer, and they would be able to utilize the existing vegetation that's already there in that buffer if it was healthy and was on the property line. The applicant has stated that, as I mentioned, the building would be minimum 3,500 square feet. She submitted a very rough rent elevation, but it kind of gives the board an idea. She's committed to an all-brick facade, and she knows that the front of the building facing Sulphur Springs Road, there would have to be features such as windows, doors, or other ornamental features that would present the front of the structure towards the road, and she's aware of that. But this is a very rough idea of what the building would look like. The applicant has stated that the average congregation size is 67. However, they are proposing the church sanctuary to be constructed for a maximum occupancy of 300 in order to accommodate larger events that they have at the church twice yearly, which would have approximately 250 to 300 people at the event. The applicant has indicated that Sunday morning service will be from 9:30 a.m. until 12:30 p.m., and that there will be small meetings of 10 or so church members from time to time as listed in the application. With this being the preliminary special use permit, we have not required the landscape plan or the photometric lighting plan. If she moves on to the full special use permit, she will be required to have a landscape plan and to hire an electrical engineer to design a photometric lighting plan to demonstrate that the lighting spillover onto adjacent properties would not exceed the board's expectations and would not be intrusive. As I mentioned, we do have that revised concept site plan in front of you. She has addressed most all of the comments that we had. The parking has been taken out of the required front setback, which is a minimum requirement. She's committed to, although it's not shown on the plan, to providing a solid waste enclosure. They do not intend on having a dumpster, but just using the city carts. I did put 6 emails and letters on your table. We did have quite a bit of feedback from the public, and I told anybody that could not attend the meeting and speak at the public hearing to feel free to send emails or fax letters, and I would be happy to forward that on to the board. So we do have 6. I want to get it on record that we do have 6 emails and letters there in front of you from the folks at home who might not have been able to attend today's meeting. A lot of the concerns with regards to this application were centered around traffic, and I do have Mr. Ram Balachandra, PTOE, the city's traffic engineer, to address the traffic at that intersection, as well as proposed improvements that the city has planned for that intersection. As I know that was a pretty serious concern that the neighbors had. With that being said, I'll be happy to answer any questions before or after the public hearing. Ms. Malakam is here if you have any questions for her as well. And as I mentioned, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Blomley. Any questions for Mr. Blomley? All right. Ms. Malakam, anything you'd like to add to the application?
Yes, sir. I would like to just add for clarification purpose. But first of all, my church pastor would just like to take a couple of minutes just to say something to the board, if that is okay.
Okay. Be fine.
Sorry, and I would have to interpret because a lot of our members are watching and they don't understand English. So he'll take a couple of minutes to address the board, and then I'll interpret, and then I'll just go on and add what I needed to add.
Okay, that'd be fine.
And I would like to introduce my pastor, Pastor Suridet Udomsak. He just wanted to take a couple of minutes just to address the board.
ก่อนอื่นเบิด คณะเองขอบใจ พระผู้เป็นเจ้าที่ให้พวกน้อยคืนมาที่นี่และขอบใจศาลซึ่งมีโอกาสได้ให้พวกน้อยคืนมาสถานที่แห่งนี้ในวันนี้
First of all, I would like to thank God, our mighty God, and the chairman and all the board members for the opportunity to listen to our proposal this morning for the building of our church.
ขอบใจท่านผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านซึ่งเป็นเนเบอร์ซึ่งมีโอกาสได้เข้ามาฟังสถานที่แห่งนี้ด้วยในวันนี้
And also, I would like to thank you, all the neighbors that had show up this morning for this meeting, and I hope that we can resolve any issues that we can in regarding this matter.
จุดประสงค์ของพวกน้อยซึ่งมาอยู่ประเทศอเมริกาในเบื้องต้นก็มาฮู้จักกับพระเจ้าองค์นี้เห็นว่าพระเจ้าองค์นี้เป็นพระเจ้าองค์จริงแท้ดังนั้นพวกเราจึงมีโอกาสได้สร้างให้คนลาวมีเชิดขึ้น
Our main purpose this afternoon is that it is a very important milestone for us as a Laotian community here, because in our culture, Christianity is a minority itself. So we are very proud to come this far to try to have a church of our own. So we are very excited, and we praise the Lord for the opportunity for us to have found this church and have the opportunity to present our vision to the board members and all the neighbors here this afternoon. I apologize.
ขน้อยเห็นมิชชันนารีซึ่งไปอยู่ประเทศของขน้อยเป็นเวลา35ปีได้คนลาวมาเชื่อพระเจ้าแต่คนเดียว
I just wanted to share with you that when I was younger, 30 years, the missionary had tried to bring, the Laotian people and convert them to Christianity. And during the 30 years, I only know of one that had converted. So this is a very big event for us, and it's very special.
ในปัจจุบันนี้พวกเราเข้ามาอยู่ประเทศอเมริกาแล้วเห็นว่าปุ่มลุมกันได้เป็นเชิดแต่ว่าในปัจจุบันนี้พวกเราอาศัยเชิดของคนอเมริกันอยู่จึงจะได้เชิดเป็นของตนเองเพื่อประกาศเอาคนลาวหลายพันคนซึ่งยังบ่ฮู้จักพระเจ้าอยู่ในเมืองนี้ให้ฮู้จักพระเจ้าในอนาคต
We've been here as a congregation for about 9 years, and we are very excited to have the opportunity to spread God's word to the Laotian people that are currently here. We want all of them to know who we are and why we are here. We are here to service our Lord and to spread the God's ministry.
ถ้าท่านผู้มีเกียรติเห็นว่าท่านผู้มีเกียรติจะประทานบ่อนนี้ให้เป็นบ่อนตั้งเชิดตั้งวิหารของคนลาวดังนั้นเห็นว่าพวกพี่น้องคนลาวอาจจะเข้ามาหาพระเจ้าหลายและก็ขอบใจซึ่งท่านผู้มีเกียรติจะมีโอกาสให้ในวันนี้ด้วยขอบใจ
I would like to lastly thank you, to everyone that attended the meeting this afternoon. And if it's God's will, I believe that we should have no problem. But if we do, this will be a great experience for us. But we are just looking forward to proceed if whatever the result may be. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, first of all, I would like to speak on behalf of my church, the Lao Christian Fellowship. And thank you, Chairman Rogers and all the board members. Just like Mr. Blomley had addressed earlier, we've pretty much worked pretty hard. We don't have that much experience in putting together, the site plan. The reason why we went to the preliminary route was because we wanted, since we are a small congregation, we have limited funds, limited time, and limited manpower. So we wanted to go this route to try to see, if there's something that would be pleasing and to the board, and also to preserve the integrity of the neighborhood. Our basic fundamental issues are that we need to know where we should go from this point per contract, with the landowner, and also just to kind of get a sense of direction of what we needed to do if we did not or was not in compliance with any of the zoning ordinances. We would like to, for the board to let us know. And also, if the, neighbor has any questions, then we are here to basically answer any question. We all are a small congregation, like our pastor had alluded earlier. We've been together for about 9 years. The average congregation is about 67 to 70 people, in the church, and we are affiliated with the Baptists, with the Southern Baptists, actually. So I've just wanted to have this opportunity to let anyone who has a question for us or the board members at this point to be addressed. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malachem. Any questions for Ms. Malachem? All right, I see some hands in the audience.
We live on Buckle Street, and of course, the Independent Baptist Church is the end of our street.
Okay, ma'am. Let me. What we're going to do is, as soon as she's finished, then we're probably going to open the public hearing. At that time, would be a good opportunity for you all to come forward, make any comments that you have, any questions that you have.
Where would they park 300 cars?
Okay.
Okay, no, actually, I've wanted to address that as well. It's actually not going to be 300 cars. On record, we usually have once a year an annual revival, and I think at the time, since everything that I wrote in the BZA write-up, there might be a discrepancy there a little bit. On record, I understand from the church staff that it's once an annual event, once a year, and the maximum that we had over at our current church, where we are renting right now, is 200 people at the revival. So that's just an annual, once-a-year thing that we do as a church. So basically, we're not going to need 300 parking space for for the people to come, because I believe that is for the parking requirement is one parking for every 8 seating. Is that correct, Matthew?
Yes, ma'am.
And then, we took the plan to SEC, and they have dried out. And then he had told me, he, referring to Jamie, the vice president of SEC, had said that they should be able to be, in compliance with city. So that's just to answer your question.
I just know how that corner is.
Okay.
Okay. At this time, then, and when I ask about questions, I'm sorry, I may have misled folks. I'm really asking about questions that the board members have. We're going to conduct a public hearing in just a second. At that time, the members of the public will have an opportunity to address their concerns and comments to the board, and whatever questions they may want to pose. We as board members may not have answers to those questions, but at the end of the public hearing, then we'll probably give Ms. Malachem or a representative from the church an opportunity to come forward and address those questions. It's kind of how I envision it going forward. So with that having been said, are there any other questions in from board members as to for Ms. Malachem or Mr. Blomley? Okay, thank you, Ms. Malachem. We'll let you have a seat, and then at this time we'll go ahead and conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would please come forward to the podium, state your name, your address, and any comments, questions, concerns that you have. So it's open.
I guess me.
Okay.
Good morning. I live at 631 Haynes. I live directly across from Regency Park subdivision. I'm the lady that sent you your 3-page letter addressing the tragedy on Haynes Drive, Sulphur Springs, Esters, and our entrance into Regency Park.
Ms. Smith, could you state your name for the record,
Oh,
please?
sorry. Yvonne Smith.
Thank you.
And anyway, I didn't know about the first meeting. I just found out about this one today, just a few days ago, or I'd been at the first one. The pictures you're showing, it is areas that have been destroyed, but they're being rebuilt. Right across the street, there's very posh homes on Sulphur Springs, on Haynes. If you come down 4 houses, which is where my house starts, the homes average anywhere from, I say, about $220,000 to $350,000. A lot of them have pools. You just can't see it. It's a nice area. It's not like what you're seeing on the viewer at all, if you just go down a few houses. So the area is being rebuilt. But my big problem is Haynes Drive and Sulphur Springs, Esters, and Regency Park. We've lived there since April of '07, and we have personally witnessed 26 wrecks on those 3 little intersections. And these have been where they hit the ditch coming out of the S-curve, they do corkscrews in the air, they come down on all 4 tires, the car breaks in 4 pieces. The example I gave you was of a mother taking her 2 kids to the dentist. We've had probably 15 head-on collisions on the corner of Sulphur Springs Road and Haynes, or Esther and Haynes. This has been an ongoing tragedy for years and years and years. I know that S-curve is really bad, and I've talked to several department people, and they say in the next 2 years that they plan on doing something with the curve. Murfreesboro has very good intentions, but usually, for some reason, things get put back for years and years. We used to live over in the Riverbend 5 subdivision, and when they were supposed to take Leanna Road and widen it and put an access road into 840, it never got done. I don't know if it's still planned, but it didn't get done. But our theory, these people, I don't even know if any of these people live in our neighborhood. And if you've sat and read the letter, you already know there's two churches. There's a church on Sulphur Springs Road, 8/10 of a mile farther down, and there is a church 2/10 of a mile across the street. We already have 2 churches. This is not an industrial park area. Even though the pictures made it look like it is, it's not. These are very nice people. It's an old, well-established neighborhood. And when you set and you add up, I estimate their church is going to grow. And they're going to have, I estimate most people have 100 people in each of their services as it grows. Well, if you add up what the 2 churches we already have, that's 19,100 additional cars that we're already getting in from those other 2 churches that we have. And then by the time you add on the people, it's 56,000 additional people between the 3 churches. And we can't handle it. Our population, we are maxed out. Now, I know you guys plan on doing something to Haynes, and I know you want to do a DeJarnett type of situation. I talked to one of the people that said that is going to be your prime example of what you would like to do eventually long-term on Haynes. We can't handle that. We have 149 houses that are already on Haynes going all the way down the road. DeJarnett has 12 houses. Their average lot was anywhere from 1 acre to 2 acres. We have 1/4 of an acre. We cannot handle having our yards taken. That is our barrier, as it is with the sound that we have from the racetrack out there on Haynes. You can't do a DeJarnett on Haynes. The people won't allow you to do it, for one thing, because it would really affect the property values. But dealing with these people seem like very, very nice people. We already have 2 churches. We do not have the road capacity. It's too densely populated over there. You have got to either give us the turn lane from Sulphur Springs Road to Regency Park prior to anything going in, or get rid of that S-curve, because we are, my Lord, I witnessed a wreck and was walking 3 foot back into my yard, and there was another wreck. People had rear-ended the group we had in line. But this has been going on. We've only been there since April of 2006, and my next-door neighbors, it's a rental. They've got 2 little kids. I went over, and the first thing I told them is, don't ever let your children out in your front yard. You've lost 3 mailboxes in less than a 2-week period, the people that lived there before. I said, it's a death trap coming out of that S-curve. Now, I know there's fluids from the cars, because the cars have to crawl going through that S-curve, and so they're dropping transmission fluid and oils, and it builds up on the road. And so when you mix it with the water from the rain, these wrecks only occur when it's raining or 30 minutes after the rain stops. It's like a bad cocktail mixture for a disaster over there. And I know they're going to say they plan on doing something, but I can name you incident of things that have been planned in the way of road improvements, and for whatever reason, they never get done. And don't allow anything to go in over there, please, until you address this situation. I'm surprised the city hadn't been sued already. I mean, we witnessed 26 wrecks, and we actually went out in the middle of the night and probably pushed 10 cars, 10 different individual wrecks, out of ditches, and those people are dishonorable, and they just take off. They don't even stay to give their phone numbers or the damage or anything. This has got to get taken care of before you allow anything like this to come in. Just take care of the situation, let them come back, and then redo their stuff. And if it's meant to be, it will be. But deal with the traffic situation first, because it's lethal over there. You guys don't live over there, I assume. Would you want to? We already have 2 churches over there. I have 2 ministers in my immediate family. I grew up, my family was Church of God and Assembly of God. My husband's Baptist. But we're not an industrial park area over there. We do not deserve to have our neighborhood become more like an industrial park area. They are redoing the homes. You come back 5 years from now and you probably won't be able to tell there's been much damage. But it's just, you've got to take care of this road prior to giving anybody any change of any permits or zoning. Because to be honest, the people just don't trust. You know what I mean? There's been situations that down through the years that have not gotten taken care of. So until you guys take care of the situation, they're going to fight you tooth and nail. And because it's not fair. It's not fair to us. We got to live over there. It's our quality of life. And I'm betting most of these people do not live in that area. And I went and talked to the 2 other churches. Most of the people that go to those other 2 churches don't live in that area. We're getting 56,000 people a year just in a 2-block radius. They don't even live in our area, most of them. That's not fair. It's not fair. You guys wouldn't want it in your neighborhood. I know I wouldn't want it in mine. I used to live over in Riverbend. I tell you exactly, they definitely wouldn't want it over there. So it's just, you've got to deal with the road first and then let the people come back. If it's that critical and that important and you're going to do it now. Do it in the next 3 or 4 months and then let them come back. Get on with it. I was told it's going to take up to 2 years for you guys to take care of the curve or whatever you're going to do to the curve or widen the road. I mean, you're going to take a little bit of my yard when you put in that turn lane. A little bit. That's okay. We're willing to do that. But do it. Don't take all of Haynes and turn it into DeJarnett, because they will fight you down through there. I've been over and looked at it. I had not been on DeJarnett before, and I did not know bicycle paths and sidewalks and everything else you want to turn. It would destroy the property values over there. So you've got to handle Sulphur Springs Road, Haynes, Regency Park, and Esther's before you let anything go in. I mean, would you want it next door to you? When you go home tonight, talk to your wife and your husbands, would you want it next to you, knowing all the traffic problems we're having over there right now? And it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And it's just, please consider these things before you do anything. Because we're not a DeJarnett, we won't let it become a DeJarnett lane over there. And we're not industrial, even though it looked like an industrial park area, we're not. We're coming back. It may take us 4 or 5 years, but we will be back. And a lot of these people have been there 30 and 40 years, are fine people. And you do not sacrifice one neighborhood. Like I said in the letter, we're not in access roads to 840 and 24. Don't try to turn us into one of those. You have Thompson Lane, you have Northfield. That's where it's supposed to be. Leave it over there. Let us stay our neighborhood. And basically, that's about all I've got to say. Like I said, that's about it. But just consider this, please. And I know the city has got wonderful intentions. They plan on doing the repairs. But don't let anything go in until the repairs are done. Because you know, if you look back at the history of Murfreesboro, I can name you 3 or 4 incidences. Things did not get done when they were supposed to have gotten done in the way of road improvements. And still haven't gotten done. So please do the improvements first and then let them come back. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any questions for Ms. Smith from the board? All right, thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this application?
Mr. Rogers and board members, my name is Linda Eakes, and I'm here representing my mother, Octavia Pate. She lives at 2338 Sulphur Springs Road. Her property is located directly across from this proposed rezoning. On April 10th, we all suffered a huge loss. It's a major disaster for Murfreesboro to have to contend with. The request comes at a time when many people in this area are trying to rebuild. There are vacant lots still with people undecided what they want to do. Other people are just trying to deal with the insurance companies and trying to get their homes back in shape. We're learning in the last day or two that many residents in our area were not even aware of this zoning request, simply because of the fact it only reached out to 250 feet to the right and left of this property. Well, basically, this area is traveled by so many other people that it impacts this area. It's just not these people that are around this property. There are people coming from Siegel, from the churches, from State Farm. We have individuals that use basically Haynes Drive as a go-between between Thompson Lane and Memorial Boulevard. So we have this traffic every single day. So it's not just the neighborhoods that's also affected by it. We are expecting that the traffic will increase. We are getting more subdivisions down the road from us, so that will impact us also with more traffic. We have 2 churches, as has been noted, that are located within a couple of blocks of this property. We've got a situation that is occurring right now with people cutting, and I'm going to use this as an example. My mother's home backs up to a cul-de-sac. Well, some people cannot gain access to Haynes Drive during particular times of the day, so they have just decided that my mother's driveway is their access. So they come and through the cul-de-sac into my mother's driveway to get on to Sulphur Springs Road. And we have actually spoke to the police about this, and the reasoning being is they can't get out, so they think this is a quick access, just as an example of what we're having to deal with. As the lady mentioned earlier, we're also dealing with frequent wrecks, constant wrecks. I'm over there at my mother's house quite a bit helping her, and it's at a time where it's raining and the roads are slick and cars are turning, they're going too fast, and they're constantly having wrecks. So that is another concern. My third concern today is the expansion of this site. It is going to be more commercial than residential. Church is something that we all, want to respect, and we want churches to build. We're all Christian individuals, but it is very difficult for my mother and for the neighbors to look out from our house every morning to see a commercial building in front of her property, and that's basically what she will be facing every single day. This property is going to be sandwiched between the corner lot and the back of Victoria Park. This means to me very difficult in trying to expand, and all this parking. I know she said randomly 200 people. Okay, when they run out of parking spots, where are they going? They're going to the street, and this happens at every church in Murfreesboro. If you have an Easter Sunday or a special occasion, they will park on the streets. That is a concern because people turning from Haynes Drive onto Sulphur Springs Road will be impacted by that traffic for those people trying to park on the street. There are available church sites in the area that are more suitable for their needs and their growth. And I thank you today for you hearing me.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Eakes. Any questions for Ms. Eakes from the board? All right. Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else present wishing to speak?
Hello, my name is Stephen Smith. I live at 631 Haynes Drive. My concern is the wrecks between the corner of Sulphur Springs and Regency Park, right there on Haynes Drive. Usually during a rain or after rain, we notice several wrecks, and that they need to do something about that S curve, and it's slippery. I drive on it. I get off at 6 in the morning. I go to work at 6 in the evening, and it's either extremely heavily trafficked when I'm leaving for work, or it's very early in the morning, and that's good because if it rained that night, I have enough time to slow down and hope nobody runs in behind me. But if they're going to make any changes like to like they've done at Jarnett. They need to, only make turn lanes. I know they have one at Sulphur Springs, but they could do a turn lane there in front of our house. I know it'll take some of our yard, but it would help the situation. And anyway, that's basically my concern is the traffic. That's why.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any questions from the board for Mr. Smith? Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Excuse me. I'm Jewel Norris, and I reside at 2506 Buckle Street. I did send an email. I was not sure I could leave the office, and I need to speak so that I can return back to the office. My concern is, and I respectfully submit, that you will not allow this preliminary special use permit request, and that that we are able to maintain our residential single-family RS-15 zone for this property in this area. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Norris. Any questions for Ms. Norris from the board?
I'll just be fairly brief. I'm going to kind of speak in behalf of two neighbors. Mrs. Adams lives at the corner of Buckle and Haynes, and it's her yard that is impacted by the most wrecks. She is in Adams' place now and could not be here. Al Pruitt is on the other corner of Haynes and Buckle, and his yard is the other yard that ends up with all of the traffic and all of the wrecks, and his house has been hit a couple of times. And I know they are both concerned about the traffic, and they are opposed to this. And, you know, the tornado, as bad as it was, the one thing I thought to myself was it would have been an ideal time for the city to eliminate that curve, since the houses were wiped out then anyway. But hindsight's always better. So I certainly hope that you all will deny this, and I would even submit that you put a moratorium on any kind of additional building or subdivisions or churches or anything that's going to bring more traffic to our area. Now, I'm Bob Norris. I live on the first house on Buckle Street, 2506.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Any questions from the board for Mr. Norris?
My name is Evelyn Hicks, and my husband and I, Daryl, we built our house in 1983 on Regency Park Drive. When we built our house, we were one of the first houses in Regency Park, and it's changed a lot since then. The road stopped at the dip where the church is now, and the road, it was considered Sulphur Springs, made a little square, and the city said that was too dangerous, that they were going to fix it, so that's what's happened. Now we've got that S, which I believe is probably more dangerous because people don't slow down for that. They had to slow down the old way it was. But we would just like for our neighborhood to stay single family. The neighborhood has had a lot of tragedy from this tornado. It's been very upsetting every day to go out and see, all the disaster. It's been very hard on a lot of elderly people, and it's just been very hard on the neighborhood, and then we don't need to have something else to worry about the neighborhood. So we would just appreciate it if you would consider leaving this single family. We already have the church. If you try to, I can't even get it. I live on the second house on the left on Regency Park off of Haynes. Mr. Rogers, I believe you've been there to see me. I think we have a mutual friend. We can't even get out of our drive when people are coming from Siegel Elementary. And a lot of times, it's very hard to get out of our drive anyway. But there is so much traffic. Then try to turn left on Haynes. If you try to turn left on Haynes between 3 and 6, just forget it. I mean, we just go right and go around because there's just no way. And undoubtedly, if it rains, you will hear sirens because there's going to be a wreck on Haynes. So we would just appreciate it if you would leave our neighborhood like it is. We have nothing against churches, but we would appreciate if you would leave our neighborhood like it is. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hicks. Any questions from the board for Ms. Hicks? All right, thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Delbert Lester. I live 2510 Buckle Street. Been living there for 16 years. And addressing the traffic, like everyone said, every time it rains, there's a wreck on the corner. Even the city police, I've seen their cars in the ditch. And I said, well, it'll probably take some officials, relatives to be killed before anything's done. But we have tried and haven't had any success at it. Also, the property that they're purchasing, I don't know whether they know it or not, but it does flood bad at times. I have seen it. And I'd appreciate you to leave our neighborhood like it is. I'm kind of like Governor Palin. I can stand on my porch and see the church from the porch. So I didn't get a letter, and I inquired to the department why, and they said, well, you have to live 250 feet. I said, well, Tony Rhodes is the only one that got a letter because he's got 10 rental houses around it, and it's just a mess. And I think they should have tried to buy the property there on the corner to straighten out the street. It's the best opportunity they'll ever have. And I'm spending over $200,000 to replace my home. And that's 50 years gone. And I like the neighborhood, I like the neighbors, but if I'd known this was going to happen, I would have sold my lot. I turned $50,000 down for the lot, but I would have sold it and moved somewhere else. And I just hope you will consider our wishes and let the neighborhood stay like it is. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lester.
My name is Charles Slover, live at 809 Haynes Drive.
I'm sorry, I did not catch your last name.
Slover.
Mr. Slover, okay.
You've heard everything about the traffic. You've heard traffic about Haynes Drive for years. But we're talking about the church. I live right there at the corner of Haynes and Sulphur Springs. The church is going to be put right in my backyard. The access to the church is going to be right down the property line. And my property is going to be devaluated to nothing. Right now, we're still fighting the insurance company and either build my house back or tear it down or do something with it. We're still in negotiation with them. But the traffic, you heard of it, and it, excuse me, when it rains hard, it does flood. It comes from from Sulphur Spring Long all the way into my yard on Haynes Drive. It comes all the way across the road. The gutters down there that's not been fixed, even when they widened Sulphur Spring Road, they didn't do nothing to Haynes Drive but bring the water on into our yards. Now my concern is my property is going to be devaluated because there's going to be a church right here, right smack dab in my backyard. And that's the only thing I've got to say about it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Slover. Any questions for Mr. Slover? We are a quiet bunch today. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this application?
Hello, my name's Barbara Wallace. I live at 715 Richard Road. I live directly across the street from Middle Tennessee Baptist Church. I'm a Christian, and I think any time that God's kingdom is expanded, it's a good thing. But I live across the street from Middle Tennessee Baptist Church, and it's like living across the street from Kroger. It's very noisy. They have 16 buses that go out. There's something there every single day. We have traffic there. I go to church at Trinity United Methodist Church, which is on Jones. When I try to make it home from Jones back to Richard Road, the traffic is backed up on Buckle. There's a line waiting, people trying to get out of that church onto Haynes. I'm trying to get back to my house. And it's very hard because when church is out, everyone wants to go home, and they want to go home fast. And I don't know how many times people have turned in and almost hit my car as I try to get home from the church. You know, they're all coming out of the church. They want to get home. I'm trying to make it home. Traffic. Also, even though I know they don't mean to be, it's trashy to live across the street from a church. Bulletins fly, things from Vacation Bible School. It's trashy. And like I said, there's something that is going on there every single day. And we have lots and lots of cars that go by. The buses knocked over our mailbox. They knocked off my daughter's rear view side mirror. Coming out, trying to navigate this very narrow Richard Road, trying to get out. So we have the Family Worship Center on Sulphur Springs. We have this Middle Tennessee Baptist Church. They're great groups, love them, love Christian churches, but we don't need a church on the corner of Haynes and Sulphur Springs Road where there is way too much traffic already. If you have ever tried to make a left onto Haynes from Sulphur Springs, it's a nightmare. It's awful. You might as well forget it. You might as well turn right and find another way to go. Thank you. I'm against the proposal. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Any questions for Ms. Wallace from the board? Okay.
I'm not going to make up. I just want to remind you guys.
I'm sorry. Let me make sure that there's nobody else that wants to make comments before I have some repeat comments.
How you doing? I'm Jackie Reed. I live at 815 Haynes Drive. My property backs up to where they're wanting to build this church. I've lived there longer than anybody, probably in this whole room. I was born at that property and have seen a lot of growth over the years. And really, we've never contested anything. Jameson Place, we've given some of our property for the road. Originally, Haynes Drive came into the front of this property. Now it goes straight through. But personally, I just don't want a parking lot in my backyard. So I am definitely against it.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Green, right? Reed, Ms. Reed. Any questions for Ms. Reed? Okay, is there anyone else that has not already spoken? Okay, all right. Ms. Malcolm, I'm going to let you speak last, but so is there anyone else that wants to make any additional comments now? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to remind you guys, if you look at your letter, I did the math. 3 churches, 56,600 additional people in the area per year. 19,100 cars per year additional if there's 3 people to a car on average. The national statistics are 1.2 children, so 3 people to a car. We can't handle what we've got. Most of these people are not from our community even, and so we can't handle it. It's just, we're not an industrial park. We're not a trashy neighborhood. We don't want to be devalued more. Please stop it until you at least address and take care of the situation before you give anybody permission to do anything. I mean, other than a single-family home. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Okay. Anyone else? All right, Mr. Malachem, I'm going to give you another opportunity. Is there any other comments that you want to make, any other questions that you have, or comments that you want to have to address some of these concerns that have been raised here?
Yes, I do. Well, first of all, to the board members, I do understand and respect, the neighbors' concern. But when we first initially had looked at this property, we understand that there was a tragedy, in this area, and by us being in that area, we never wanted for the area to be commercial. We never wanted the area to be, industrialized park. We wanted to expand God's kingdom, and that's all we had in mind at the time. And also I understand, everything that the neighbor had pointed out to us this afternoon. We totally understand and we respect. But also, in conjunction to that, we are a very small congregation. We've been looking for 9 years, and we have limited funds, and this was the only thing that are out there that were available for us, and that was within, our funding limit, because we've been searching, and that Murfreesboro is expanding because of the growth here in the last 10 years. I've been here 16 years myself, so I know as a realtor, I also know that I don't believe that we would consider a church commercial or industrialized. So that was, by all means, we don't want to be disrespectful to any of the neighbors here. But basically, the reason why we looked at this was because, number one, of our limited funding, and this was the only thing that are out there in today's market that was within our price range. And also, I think definitely I do agree with all the neighbors here that the major concern that we do have as well is the traffic, the concern of that the traffic congestion or traffic flow may cause accidents and so forth. So in talking with Matthew, I did learn that the city does have a plan to expand this area, but I'm not the expertise. So if I may, Matthew, is Mr. Ram here? If he can maybe explain what the situation with the traffic and that is his expertise, to maybe kind of shed some light to kind of see if we were, because I believe that that's coming in the spring of 2010 or summer of 2010, because our church, we are planning to actually just, do the preliminary right now. We're probably not going to be ready to build this church and go with the full special use permit until maybe 2 years down the road, minimum. So, with that being said, I've wanted to see if Mr. Ram can, explain to us exactly what's going on in that intersection, so that will kind of alleviate some of the anxiety and the concerns that the neighbors may have, just to kind of see if that will make sense, if that is okay.
Yeah,
with the board.
And I was actually going to ask Mr. Balachandra if he could come up and speak. He's been in contact with our city engineer, Mr. Griffith, who was going to attend today, but had some prior obligations, and he could not make it. But Mr. Griffith has briefed Mr. Balachandra on the proposed safety improvements to that intersection and to that stretch of Haynes Drive, and to include that curve. And also, of course, Mr. Balachandra is our, and you heard me mention the initials PTOE before. That stands for Professional Traffic Operations Engineer, which we're very proud every time we introduce him, because he's only one of a handful in the state who carry that title. But Mr. Balachandra will address the traffic issues, and as well as the proposed improvements that the city has to that intersection.
All right, Rom, I think your number's been called, so you might come on down.
Good afternoon, Chairman Rogers and board members. I spoke with Mr. Griffith, our city engineer, just a few minutes ago before the meeting, and he advised me that he has already been working with a consultant to do some improvements on Haynes Drive from about Regency Park Drive to Regionwood Drive. That's between the two curves that a lot of the members here, a lot of the residents here have been talking about. It was already in our radar that there has been some collisions, and we have been analyzing the collisions, and Mr. Griffith is working with a consultant to come up with an interim design that would address some of the curvatures of the roads that the residents have been talking about, the S-curve, and make some turn lane improvements. Possibly a continuous turn lane with road widening between the sections of Regency Park Drive and Reaganwood Drive. He was telling me that they are well into the design. They lack about another maybe a month or two to complete the design, after which the city will be reviewing, his office will be reviewing the design, and hopefully get to work sometime next spring. We anticipate the project to be 3 to 4 month project. So by fall of 2010, we are hoping that that improvement will be in place.
Ram, I know that when they were considering and approving the extension of, I think it was Iron Gate through there, that was done first because with the intent that it was to be followed by improvements from Memorial all the way up to Thompson Lane, I think, improving Haynes Drive. But now it sounds like it's been the scope has been limited much more.
That's correct. As an interim, what Mr. Griffith advised me is that when we do make this improvement between Regency Park and Regionwood Drive, we are also going to overlay from Reganwood, Tedder Drive, all the way to Memorial, just an overlay with that little improvement between that section. But as far as the longer project, that's right now up in the air, and I can't really elaborate where the city is with that.
That would be a city project. It wouldn't be. That's not a state road.
No, that will be strictly a city project with city funding.
I will say, can you repave Haynes Drive from Regency Park to Regenwood to Memorial?
That's correct.
It's like a wagon
we are
trail
hoping
right
the
now.
improvement with an overlay, so that there are some patches in between Memorial and Sulphur Springs. So hopefully that will take care of that.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you, Ron.
Yes.
In this improvement, is there any discussion of a traffic light at Sulphur Springs and Haynes? And then I have a second question. Second question is there any improvement at all with respect to widening of Sulphur Springs at that intersection, whether there be a traffic light or not?
Sure. Your first question, traffic signals are analyzed. I analyze them based on the warrants, and I think Mr. Halliburton, through Planning Commission, there are 8 warrants for justifying a traffic signal. And what that means is there are some traffic volume thresholds that an intersection has to meet, or each approach has to meet. If not, we will put signals at every intersection. So we have a guideline, and it's not set in stone, but it is a range. And just to give the board an idea of what we are looking at when we analyze an intersection for signalization, we look at traffic volumes both on the main street, in this case Haynes Drive, and on the side street, which is Sulphur Springs. The range is based on an 8-hour day. That means the traffic volumes have to be met for 8 hours, not just 1 hour. but 8 hours of the day. Now, it can be breaks in that 8 hour. That means it can meet a couple of hours in the morning, and then a couple of hours in the mid-morning, and then 4 or 5 hours in the evening. And the numbers are, for the side street, in this case like Sulphur Springs, the range of traffic volumes, vehicles per hour, that it ranges from about 75 cars per hour to 150. They have to be in that range, between 75 to 150. And on the main street, which Haynes Drive is a minor arterial, it has to be anywhere between 500 to 750 cars per hour for 8 hours of the day. So that's what we have in books. That is our guidelines, and that's how we warrant signalization for this intersection. We will monitor the situation. I've done some preliminary counts. I don't have a full count at that intersection, but just local knowledge and going out there and seeing during the morning peak and the evening peak, the numbers are not close. They are anywhere between, I would say, on Haynes Drive, 300 to 400 cars an hour, and it may even go a little over 400 during the morning peak and the afternoon peak, but it will not be warranted for 8 hours. But we'll be glad to look at that for signalization when we do that improvement to see if it meets the signal warrants.
All right, any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Balachandra.
Chairman Rogers, if I might address something as well, and I know that folks were referring to this not being a non-residential use in nature, or as we would call in planning nomenclature, an institutional use. Just one thing to clarify for folks is that this is not a rezoning to commercial or industrial. Special use permit is there are uses that are seen as being compatible and allowable in residential zoning districts without having to change the zoning, although they may not be residential in nature. And when a use like an institutional group assembly use, in this case a church, goes before the board, there are the standards that we have in our zoning ordinance that they have to demonstrate compliance with, and that the board is the ultimate arbiter of whether or not they are demonstrating compliance. So just for the folks that are in the audience and for the folks that are listening, the underlying zoning would remain single-family residential, even though the use would not be residential in nature. I just wanted to clarify that. I know that the terms commercial and industrial have been used and by some of the speakers, and I wanted to just clarify for the record what we were actually looking at.
What's the required parking for the properties would be as proposed?
For a church use, our requirements in the zoning ordinance is one space for every 8 seats in the main room of assembly, or as many would refer to it in the sanctuary. So if they are proposing, for example, 320 seats, that would which is more than they're proposing, but just hypothetically, because it's an easily divisible number. And I went to Auburn, so I can't divide hard numbers. That would be divided by 8, and that would mean that there would be a total of 40 parking spaces that would be required, and those are exclusive of handicap parking spaces. Handicap parking spaces are in addition to the regular parking spaces.
Ms. Malacom, I have a couple other questions for you. First of all, what is your current location, and give me its size, how many square feet you have, where it's located.
What proposed building?
No, your current location.
Oh, our current location is at the Journey Point Church that's off of Middle Tennessee Boulevard, catty corner from Bellwood Church. And we've rented the space, hang on, I don't see, square feet ของ one congregation เนี่ย how much square feet ในปัจจุบันนี้ The current square footage for the sanctuary that we are currently using right now is about 1,600. And then the church parking จะรู้ว่า church parking นั้นเขามีจักอัน Yeah, because I believe that the whole building for the church is roughly, I believe it's a little bit under 10,000 square feet, but we're just using, that part, and every Sunday, so we have about 15 to 20 cars that we share in their parking lot every Sunday, about 15 to 20 vehicles.
You're only using the sanctuary at that church?
At that church right now, correct.
How many members do you all count?
Between 60 to 70, and that's 9 years for us to get there. So when we say small, we are very small. And then, with this being said, and we're just seeking, not to change the zoning from RS to commercial or industrial. We're just seeking, for the special use permit. And we're trying to, with the help of Mr. Blomley, to try to stay in compliance with the board, with the zoning ordinances.
You proposed a building of a minimum of 3,500 square feet. Does that include the house that currently sits on the lot?
No, that does not include the existing home right now, because we're just going to be using that for an office use.
Do you know approximately how many square feet are in that home?
The square footage of that home, I believe, is 1,800.
Okay. So we're talking a little over...
No, about 13. Oh, I apologize. They're telling me 1,300.
Okay. What is proposed for the new building? What configuration do you have in mind?
Well, to be honest, we haven't got there yet.
I'm just curious what the 3,500 square feet is going to be comprised
of. It is probably not going to be even that big. I'm thinking probably 3,000 square feet maximum. We're going to have a sanctuary, maybe Sunday school for the children and the youth group, for a room for them to have their own, study area in the main sanctuary, and that's probably it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, thank you, ma'am. Any other questions from the board? All right. Any other comments from the public? We're going to close the public hearing. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Marilyn Calvert. I live at 611 Saratoga Drive. 14 years ago, I lived on Richard Road. I understand the neighbors who say they have traffic out there. We had it out there 14 years ago, too. But I want to remind the neighbors that most of the Laotians in our town are Buddhist. I go to First Baptist Church. In the 1980s, I worked with the Laotians in an English ministry. We tried to convert them. I don't think we converted one of them. This congregation is not going to mushroom. They're not going to grow by leaps and bounds. And I'd like to see you give them a chance to try to Christianize the Laotians here in town. They're not going to mushroom in numbers. They're just trying to do their best. And I don't think they're going to add that much to your traffic, as long as you can get the S-curve straightened out, which probably has to be done. They're not going to be ready to build this 3,500 square foot sanctuary anytime soon. And you have time to straighten out the S-curve before they get their money together. Now, do you have any questions of me? I understand the neighbors saying we have traffic. We don't need any more traffic. I used to live out there. I know what they're talking about. They've had more traffic since I moved. But this congregation is not going to add that many cars to the traffic out there anytime soon. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
In closing, Mr. Rogers and the board, we just wanted to thank you for this opportunity for us to present our side, and also we just wanted to, this is why we came and seek your guidance and your help, with Mr. Ram explaining the current traffic situation. We think that there might be some things that maybe we can work to make this work for the area traffic and whatever issues that we may have. So basically, we just wanted to seek for the preliminary, because like I forgot your name, ma'am, and I apologize, that we are here to be a part of the community, that we wanted to just thank you for the opportunity for us to do this, and then we probably won't be ready until definitely at least 2 years for this. So hopefully you'll be able to resolve some of the traffic issues, so when we are ready for you to grant us the full special use permit, then we will come and prepared with the, with everything that will be in compliance. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead then and close the public hearing, and I'll open the floor for any further comments, questions, observations, remarks.
Mr. Blomley, what impact does refusal of this conditional special use permit have on the applicant's ability to reapply? In a normal application, I think it's 18 months? Am I remembering that right?
That's correct.
Would it have the same impact on them, or since this is preliminary, would it have?
What the section on preliminary special use permits says, the last section, is that the time limitation on reapplication in subsection H does not apply to applications for preliminary conditional special use permits. And section H reads that if an application for a special use permit is denied by the BZA, a reapplication pertaining to the same property and requesting the same special use permit may not be filed within 18 months of the date final action was taken on the previous application, unless such reapplication is initiated by the department or authorized by the BZA. So that section, the 18-month waiting period, would not apply for a preliminary special use permit if denial was the course of action.
Chairman Rogers, I'm not sure where Mr. Dodd was headed with that, but question, my comment would be is that I don't live necessarily in this neighborhood. However, I'm very familiar with the intersection because I have traveled it many times in my life, and it is a bear to turn left off of Sulphur Springs Road onto Haynes Drive, and I have witnessed wrecks myself. So until these improvements have been made, I just can't see us putting what little more traffic might come with the church on that intersection without seeing how the improvements will help the situation.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Halliburton, frankly, and even though they're a small congregation, we've heard proof that they may not mushroom quickly. I mean, we are approving 300 capacity. I mean, they're asking for 300. I think we have to assume the impact of what a 300-seat sanctuary would be, and based on what we've heard about the current situation, road conditions, although perhaps the preliminary traffic counts don't rise to the level of a signal with the volume that's there. I mean, it's almost like a boiling pot. If we drop one more item in there, I think we might be at a tipping point, at least certainly with the current conditions. So even in a small use, I'm not sure that we're not at a point of of overflow as far as traffic volume versus road conditions at that particular intersection. And I'm with Mr. Halliburton. I don't feel comfortable passing something with the projection that it's going to be fixed in the future, not knowing exactly. I mean, engineering knows what they think might fix it, but until we actually have it done and see how it operates, I think it's a bit speculative to assume that whatever is proposed to be done is going to fix whatever the issues are there. And I guess where I was going with my question was simply that since this is a preliminary, everybody should know. I think if we turn this down, the applicants would be free to come back at whatever point. I mean, they're not subject to the traditional time limits, I think, on this application like they might otherwise be, and they'd be free to bring another application and we could be back up here. I just thought it would be important for those who are here to kind of understand that whereas a normal denial would bar a reapplication because of the form of the application, they could be addressing this situation in 12 months or 9 months or wherever they saw fit. They wouldn't be barred from resubmitting a plan.
I guess I'll echo the other board members' comments. The traffic is so sensitive in this area. I have lived in Regentwood as recent as a couple of years ago, so I'm familiar with that area, with that big an issue and sensitive the traffic is here. To give them a preliminary approval without that issue being settled, I guess it's not what I would have in mind. So, like I said, I'm kind of leaning whether Mr. Halliburton, Mr. Dodd, or
I'll just say that, as far as churches in a residential zone, I don't have any particular objection to it. In fact, I think it's it can work. It can work well, but I have really strong reservations about this particular location. I think it's great what you're doing and what you want to do, but I honestly believe that there is a place out there that is better suited for what you want to do. The reason being, we've talked about some of the traffic problems already. But more than, I think, in addition to that, there's requirements that the applicant has to show, and even on a preliminary use permit, I think that you're here, you want information about where we're likely to go with this if you apply for a regular special use permit. And you've proposed a building that is 3,500 square feet plus maybe another 1,300 square feet. You're over 5,000 square feet. It would be substantially larger than anything else on a single lot in that area. It is entirely surrounded by residential on all four sides, and it does not front it's a fairly busy road, but it's not a Cason Lane. It's not a John Rice Boulevard. It's not something that gets major amounts of traffic and is capable of handling major amounts of traffic. It's just not. So to say that the applicant can show that the proposed building or use will have or will not have a substantial or undue adverse effect on the adjacent property, I don't think you're going to be able to show that with the proposed configuration. I don't think the second requirement is that it be constructed, arranged, or operated so as to be compatible with the immediate vicinity. And again, I think because of its use, its size, I don't think it is consistent with what surrounds that property. I know that there's other property out there for you somewhere. In my opinion, it's probably one where you just keep looking. So I'm not real excited about this one.
If there's no further comments, I'll make a motion that we deny the special use permit.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. the preliminary special use permit has been denied. But we do appreciate you all, what you're doing. Appreciate you coming in today and the remarks that you have. We appreciate everybody here from the neighborhood being here, making your comments as well. That's what makes this process work well. All right, we'll move on then in our agenda. If I can find my agenda. Oh, I think I found it. Next item on the agenda is, it should be staff reports and other business.
It should be. I was negligent. And
all right, is there any staff reports or other business? Oh, okay. If we could get everybody to kind of quietly disperse.
I think they think the meeting's over.
We are not adjourned yet. If we can get folks to quiet, you're certainly welcome to leave, but if you could do so quietly, we'd appreciate that. We still have to conduct some more business here.
All right. Not much except for one thing. Just a reminder that the July meeting is going to be a little bit later in the month than normal because of the holiday weekend that's at the beginning of the month. All of the planning meetings, including our Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, have been pushed back a week. So we're going to be on the 5th Wednesday of the month in July, which is the 29th. So July 29th, and I've already had some discussions with some applicants, so I think we'll have several items on the agenda that day. Other than that, I have no other staff reports or other business.
All right. There being nothing else then to come before the board, we are adjourned.